Spring may not necessarily be here right now, but at the same time, I think we got a little glimpse of it, at least throughout part of the country in the last couple of days, and certainly here in the Northeast for a glimmer of sunshine and some warmer temperatures. But considering the guests that I've got coming on throughout this hour, they're not going to be able to relate to that. Down from the Sunshine State in particular. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we all love each and every day. So please lock it in. And this is our Wednesday night call-in show, talking spring football with you. And getting us started is Florida football, of course, headed up by Dan Mullen. We got David Waters on the line from Gators Breakdown. David, how you doing tonight?
Good, Mark. How about you?
I'm good. Welcome in. And so Florida hit the practice field, let's see, last week, correct?
Yep, last Thursday, about a month earlier than they normally do. Of course, nobody did last year, or not many teams did last year before the pandemic canceled everything. So Florida, Dan Mullen had some good reasons for it. He said, look, without travel for recruiting, they were able to evaluate all the film from last year on a faster pace because you're in the office. All your recruiting is done on Zoom and virtually. So they're in the office. They were able to do their evaluation from last season. They were ready to hit the field. And then he also says, this helps these players a good bit because now starting in mid-February, they basically have an extra month to go back and evaluate the film. The coaches have that extra month to evaluate the film, and the players can watch themselves also for 4 or 5 weeks longer than other programs out there. So, Florida's got a lot of change on both sides of the ball. Coaching changes on defense, a lot of philosophical change on offense. So any tape that these players can go out there and watch it themselves and not of somebody else, like they had to do last year. If you were a freshman and haven't got to play, Mark, I mean, there's 45 of the 77 players on the roster haven't went through a spring practice for Florida. Kyer Elam, one of the best cornerbacks in the SEC, one of the best cornerbacks in the nation, he's going into his third season at Florida. This is his first spring practice. He was a normal year early. He was not an early enrollee in the class of 2019, so he played as a freshman in this 2019 season. Didn't get spring practice last year, so this is his third season in college football, and this is his first spring practice. So he lets you kind of know the weirdness of it. So good reasons for the Gators to start early.
David, they've been on the field for roughly a week, and I know that. To try to get any kind of information out of these spring practices, basically you need to be majoring in espionage at this point. It seems like they become, further and further locked down type situations. But if we heard anything, any inklings of any news or information out of spring practice?
Mark, we know about the change on offense. So that change on offense is apparent. DeMarcus Bowman, a 5-star transfer running back from Clemson at Florida, he's impressing early on. Now, he's not taking the first team reps. Of course, he's the new guy. He's going to have to earn his way to pass Damian Pierce and Malik Davis. But it's apparent early on that at least with the second and third stringers on the roster, he's kind of pulling away from those guys. And look, we probably know it's only a matter of time. If he's going to live up to his 5-star billing, it's only a matter of time before he's going to be the guy at running back. But of course, all the questions, he was the big name coming in. But of course, all the philosophical changes because of the quarterback position and Emory Jones out there running this offense, and just because of players like Emory Jones and a running back stable that's going to now include a 5-star like DeMarcus Bowman. It's going to be a run focused offense. And that's not to say Emory Jones can't pass or won't pass. He will, but he's going to base the offense is going to be based off the run. It's going to be based off his own read. It's going to be based off of RPO. So, this is an important spring for Emory Jones in the leadership for him. He's been on campus. This is his 4th year now. He knows the offense. Not a lot of newness as far as he goes in this offense, but there is some newness with the offense being led by him. So, look, you're not going to take the full leadership role as through spring practice, but it starts here. And look, you got to go win ball games. And look, we'll see what type of leader he is. Nobody's going to be the wear your emotion on your sleeve, Tim Tebow, rah leader. Not everybody's that type. Kyle Trask was a different type of leader. His play spoke for itself and led that way. So, we'll see how Emory Jones does, but early indications are, we'll see the change on offense. They're figuring out the change, with a young wide receiver core who lost a lot last year and a bevy of running backs coming back. So the change there on offense, they'll have to figure out some things on the offensive line. They're probably still behind the 8 ball a bit, but you don't expect major improvement through 3-4 practices. It's going to take some time there. So that's as far as the offense. Defense, of course, a lot of change, Mark, especially on the back end with new coaches. And Wesley McGriff comes from Auburn. Some already good reviews from him. For defense, Mark, it's going to be back to basics. Can you tackle? Can you communicate? That's the big things. This spring is going to be big on basics for the Florida defense after you saw that performance last year. So that's kind of the inkling early on for spring practice on the defensive side of the ball is getting back to tackling, getting back to technique. Probably the T's, Mark, tackling, technique, and turnovers. You get all those things, this Florida defense will be better, and that's exactly what they're working on.
We got David Waters on the line from Gators Breakdown, so you can join him right here on YouTube. Just search Gators Breakdown or go to your favorite audio platform. And again, search Gators Breakdown. It's a great read on Florida football, no doubt, each and every week, typically multiple times a week with David and the rest of the staff there. So you're talking a lot about Emory Jones. There's no way in the world that Anthony Richardson gets a shot at this job, a legitimate shot.
Not right offhand. I mean, if he's the guy eventually, I won't say I'm surprised, but I mean, this is Emory Jones' 4th year. Dan Mullen doesn't like playing inexperienced quarterbacks. He grooms his guys, Mark. I mean, that's, the history says it. History proves it. He doesn't throw guys out there before they're ready. And Anthony Richardson didn't go through a spring last year. He was on camp in the fall, got some playing time in the Cotton Bowl as well. But he needs some more experience. He needs to grow a little bit. So, for all the talk of a changing offense and going from Kyle Trask to Emory Jones or Anthony Richardson or whatever, should we really be worried about a Dan Mullen quarterback? I mean, he made Felipe Franks into something. I mean, so I've likened it to this, Mark, and Emory Jones in the quarterback situation. At least this Florida offense would be a very similar. On the floor, the worst it will be is a Nick Fitzgerald-led Dan Mullen offense, like we saw at Mississippi State. That's going to be this offense at its worst. They can be better than that, and the spring's instrumental in getting all those pieces and building upon at least that floor.
Yeah, he is the guy that turned Felipe Franks from a 1-to-1 TD to interception guy, like 9-to-8. That first year starting to 24-6, I think, was the ratio the next season. So you can say what you will about Felipe Franks, and he certainly gains a lot of criticism across the SEC and the nation for his play at Florida and now Arkansas. But he was a much better quarterback that second starting year, no question about that. You brought up 5 stars, and I immediately thought of Eric Gilbert. So is there any way to make a comparison about a young man who caught 35 passes, 5 touchdowns at LSU last year, despite their issues at quarterback? So they had all sorts of quarterback struggles and inexperience. He still caught 35 balls there. And what Kyle Pitts was able to do during his NFL audition, and any comparison between the two players?
I think there's some market, of course. That's what Florida was able to sell him. And Tim Brewster and Kyle Pitts was instrumental himself in the recruitment of Eric Gilbert. Now, we'll see what happens there. He's not taking part in spring practice, Mark. He won't be enrolling until May. There's some question there with him transferring from LSU, transferring in conference. Maybe some grade issues as well, that if he'll even be eligible for Florida in the 2021 season. So a lot to figure out there. And if he's going to be available to play in the 2021 season. So, but that's exactly what they were able to sell him on. I mean, even with the quarterback change, Florida was able to sell, hey, you may not have Kyle Trask throwing you the ball or a quarterback like Kyle Trask, but you're going to have Emory Jones, Anthony Richardson, Carlos Del Rio, Jalen Kitna on the roster these next couple of years. And they were still able to sell him on a vision of being used similar to Kyle Pitts. And look, if this Florida offense and that run game is working like most fans and a lot of pundits expect it to, there's going to be a lot of one-on-one coverage out there trying to stop this Florida run game. It's going to leave the passing game open as long as, these quarterbacks prove that they can go out there and throw the ball. If that's the case, there's going to be a lot of one-on-one matchups for these receivers and these tight ends, these hybrid tight ends or the built-like receivers, and could go out there and play a power style of receiving. So that's what they were able to sell him on. And, for Florida's sake, you hope you get him eligible for the 2021 season.
David, what is the positional group that needs to take the biggest strides in the next month?
Offensive line, of course, Mark. We've seen the issues there. Florida running the ball lately the last couple of years. I think it does get better just because of the philosophical change. And look, when Emory Jones come in the last couple of years to run the ball as a quarterback, Florida, everybody in the stadium knew a run was coming. Everybody knew the offensive line struggled blocking for the running backs. Emory Jones still averaged 6.4 yards a carry these last couple of years there. So just a style in offense, I think, helps. And they'll be trained for it in spring and fall camp coming up for it. There's going to be some improvement there. How big improvement, I think, is the question. They will be better. They got to figure out their starting five and their next 2 or 3 deep there to feel pretty comfortable about the offensive line. But they'll be better. Then, of course, on the other side of the ball, it starts in the secondary. All the communication issues Florida had. You got to find a cornerback that you can feel pretty confident in opposite Kyer Elam there. There's Jason Marshall, the 5-star early enrollee who's on campus. He's impressed early so far. Can he be that guy opposite, or is a guy who's already been on campus? And then safety, Trey Dean returned. This is the first time he'll be able to say he's been able to play the same position in back-to-back years. That's going to be big for this Gator defense, and Trey Dean playing that safety role there. So Kyer Elam, Trey Dean will be your leaders back there. I think you point to, and all the communication issues, all the coaching changes back there in the secondary have got to be fixed. It starts with those new coaches. It starts with Trey Dean and Kyer Elam, guys who went through it a whole lot last year. So offensive line and the secondary for Florida, that's the 2 biggest positions that have to be fixed for Florida to go and compete with Georgia to win the SEC East and go play in Atlanta.
Our guy George in the live chat, a big Gator fan, David, is suggesting that the NCAA institute a rule that shoe throwing is only a 5-yard penalty, and that would ensure a win. I'm sure you've heard way too many jokes on all that, but George diving in with another one right there. And David, we're also going to take it very light and easy on Dan Mullen tonight. No Dan Mullen questions outside of just running the offense. We're going to leave him alone for this time. David and I, if you want to hear the Dan Mullen criticism and discussion, certainly catch our segments over with Dave over the last month is 6 weeks. And I'm sure over on Gators Breakdown, I'm sure that's almost a weekly conversation is brought up by the live chat over there. So David, we always appreciate it, man.
Mark, he told us last week he learned from a lot of that this past year and what he can get away with and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see. We'll see. He's still got to be himself. He's still got to be comfortable and be himself. But of course, I'm sure he'll be watching what he says out in the public from now on.
Absolutely. David Waters, Gators Breakdown. And again, whether you watch Florida football, if you're just a big college football fan and keep track of the big programs, you got to catch Gators Breakdown here on YouTube. And again, your favorite audio platform as well. David, we always appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right. You know what we do here is talk college football with you. It's the thing that I love to do the most. The number is 860-499-3332. Maybe a bit of an unfamiliar number for the regulars, but we're going to hopefully be locking in on that number going forward. So again, 860-499-3332. We got a call coming in from Dominic. Is our first caller tonight. I want to talk a little Alabama football. So let's hear from Dominic. Hello, Dominic. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, how's it going tonight?
Going pretty good, Mark. How about you?
I'm doing well. What's on your mind?
Just the good old Alabama ready to get their spring training before the season starts. So, what do you expect from the spring training from Bama?
Well, you have excellent timing, Dominic, because just today I had a conversation with our guy, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. And so we're going to be releasing those videos over the next few days. And we focused primarily on offensive line and inside linebacker. We go in depth, so we really break it down. But as you well know, they lose not just superior talent, but they lose initially. And sorry about that. I think I cut myself off there for a second. So
Yeah, you did.
my bad. So again, Alabama's Alabama. They'll be competing for a national championship. I would be surprised if they didn't. All right, Dominic.
Same here. But yep.
Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. Yeah, have a good night. Appreciate the call.
Thanks, Dominic.
Yep.
All right, folks. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I got a few on the line, so we appreciate it. Leave your comments here in the live chat. I'll not be able to catch up to too many of those, but locked in on the calls here coming in from somebody who claims they've never touched Howard's Rock. I'm not touching that comment. You're on with the voice of college football.
Hey, Mark, it's George. How you doing tonight?
It's George. How we doing tonight?
Good. Me and Pete had a conversation about this one night. We figured out together what touching Howard's Rock meant.
Do I want to hear this? This is a family show, of course.
I'm just going to drop that right now because you already know where that leads to.
Oh, I know where that leads to.
Ronan. Yeah,
I've already given you your pub tonight, George. You realize that when we had David Waters on, I already got one of your comments to the screen and gave you your pub for the
I was
night.
Blown away, man. I got it. Hey, did I see a picture of catfish on hold?
I don't know where you would have seen this. This is a new setup for me. I'm going to take everyone behind the curtain and say this is a new setup. So I'm not seeing a lot of things that I typically do, like the live chat in particular. There's our guy, Bobby, right there. He's making it all happen. Bingo. There you go.
There was so much to talk about. There was so much to talk about. There was a blip for 1 millisecond when you first started, and it showed Bobby's face, right? And I said, wow, cool. Haven't seen Bobby in a while. And then the next thing, it was David Waters. And I went, wow, cool. It's Gator Dave. And then I realized you have a new phone number and you got the same setup that Pigskin Pete has. And I'm like, wow, is this a new number? Is something happening?
We're working on some things. So Bobby's directing our show. He's directing our show tonight.
He's a good producer and director.
Absolutely. He's the man. So he is straightening out some things around here. He's cleaning us up a little bit.
He's a good representative of Tennessee.
Well, they need some.
I like Tennessee because of him.
They could use a few of those maybe on the sideline and in the football program.
I have quit saying horrible things about Tennessee since I met Bobby. I always say, good luck, guys. I hope you do good this year. I quit being mean.
Bobby's giving you the thumbs up because you're basically saying that as a Gator fan because they're no threat right now. You'll stop saying good things about the Vols when they become a threat.
You are so wrong.
You just feel bad for them.
Tennessee is always a threat. Did I ever tell you about the time Georgia Southern beat Florida? I mean, come on.
You didn't have to tell me
we don't take we don't take Tennessee for granted ever. I don't care if they're 0-13. We're not taking them for granted, or 0-10, whatever, You just don't do that in the SEC, man. That's how you lose games. LSU beat us last year. I rest my case.
Georgia Southern beat you a few years ago, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
You've had a few of those in the last 10 years.
That was the best one ever. I bet Georgia Southern has the We Beat Florida Football Auditorium or something, That's awesome. Good for them.
Right, George? So you've never touched Howard's Rock, and hopefully you never will.
Right. Hopefully I never will. And I just called to say I think the Gators could go undefeated next year. You saw what LSU just did a couple of years ago. It's going to be like that. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. We ain't afraid of Alabama.
Okay. We saw LSU do what last year that would give you hope against Alabama? I'm not connecting the dots.
Not last year. I'm talking about the Joe Burrow year.
Ago. Sure.
Like out of nowhere. Because that's what happens when you have a top 10 talent team. Anybody can beat anybody on any given day.
Well, there's two issues there. Number one, you don't have a top 10 talent team. Not necessarily. I think you're on the fringe, and Joe Burrow's not walking through the door, as people like to say.
Listen, when you look at Kirby Smart, you see there's nobody at home in his eyes. When you look at Dan Mullen, he's thinking of ways to hurt you. I love our coach. He's Dr. Evil.
He's Dr.
Did
Evil
you see
or
how
Darth
he
Vader?
went to? Did you see how he just went to the? What did he do? He threw the ball every play for a whole season and tried to run it 5 times. He's Dr. Evil. Who else could have done that? What he just did last year, even though we lost a couple games for stupid reasons. He's just the best ever.
I've got one
like,
name for you.
He's like who
could
Mike
ever do
Leach
that
on steroids.
Mike Leach.
Mike Leach.
Yes,
that's it.
Exactly. That was the name I had for you.
But not successfully. Dan Mullen tried it the first time and just it was funny. It was like trash to this, trash to that, trash to this, trash to that, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. Wow.
John Sarian is telling us in the live chat that George is rocking tonight. Am I listening to the right show?
Thank you, John. I love John. I think is he an Alabama guy? Not sure. I'm getting old. If I don't see their logo, I lose track of who they root for.
I lose track of what people root for too, what teams, and I try not to keep track or spit it out because I don't want to offend anyone out there. And John's a faithful,
this would be a good
supporter.
time. This would be a good time to ask everybody, please make your logo easy to read, like what your team is. Come on.
Like yours is big and bold.
It's pretty obvious. Yeah.
Pretty obvious. All right, George. Appreciate the call, man. Anything else?
All right. Nope. Love you guys. See you later.
Thanks, George. All right, folks. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We're here every Wednesday night. This is our Bobby produced and directed show. So if you notice a significant upgrade, not necessarily from me, it's probably a downgrade from me, but a definite upgrade overall, then that is certainly all Bobby, nothing from me. So we will be back here tomorrow at noon with Uncle Lou. That's noon Eastern time with Uncle Lou. And we're going to show you the, do we have the programming schedule for the rest of the week, Bobby? So basically on Thursday, we've got a jam-packed day. We've got Uncle Lou at noon Eastern time. We've got, there we go. If we can see behind there, we've got a 4 o'clock Miami live show. That's right here on the main channel. That's with the Wholesome One. 5:30 Eastern time, Florida State Seminoles live. And then at 7 o'clock Eastern, No, that is not a new show. That is a one-time edition, unless somebody, of course, wants to sponsor a Clemson Tigers live show, which I am all up for, but that's a one-time deal with Clemson's going to spring practice this week. So 4 live shows tomorrow. Uncle Lou at noon, 4 o'clock Miami Hurricanes live, 5:30 Florida State Seminoles live, 7 o'clock Clemson. And then I pretty much kick back and enjoy the day on Friday with only one show. Thank you, Bobby. All right, let's take our next call. This would be coming in from Kevin Dallas, Georgia, talking about what if this far as Alabama, I cannot make anything out of that. But we do have Kevin from Dallas. Would that be on the line? Kevin?
Good evening, Mark. How you doing?
There we go. I am doing just fine. How you doing?
I'm doing great, As far as what ifs, as far as the University of Alabama is concerned, just going back as far as our previous conversation regarding what ifs, and a couple of what ifs are as follows. First, what if, going back to recruiting, I guess that would have been maybe 4 years ago. As far as before, well, I guess that's 5 now. As far as before Smart left Alabama, and Fromm had verbally committed to the University of Alabama, and there's a couple of things that Coach Saban asks you as far as when you're heading out the door. Number one is to don't raid the staff. So besides not raiding the staff, is don't pull off all the 5 stars off the recruiting board, which we know that as far as Smart broke both those laws. But that's another story for another time. But along those lines was that he flipped from Alabama to Georgia. But then on the other hand, it was this young man that was a hotshot quarterback as far as in Hawaii who had made a verbal to, I think it was either Oregon or the University of Washington. But his mentor at that time was, and I apologize if I butcher the last name, Marquise Tuiasosopo, as far as the original, not the original, but I guess the second coming of the throwing Samoan. He would have gone to one of the Pac-12 schools. But then, to show you just how all things work for the good, when Fromm flipped to Georgia, Alabama put the full court press on Tua, and so he in turn transferred to the University of Alabama. But not only doing that, but then after the game, as far as I think it was the Army game, as far as San Antonio, as far as the All-Star game, he said that not only am I going to come to Tuscaloosa as far as after the game, but I'm bringing a surprise. And so everyone was wondering what the surprise was. And the surprise wound up being double deuce, as in Najee Harris. Because, the rumor at that time was that Najee Harris was supposed to have been all in as far as University of Michigan, but in turn, hey, he went to Alabama, like they say, the rest is history. So I could only wonder as far as if Fromm would not have flipped to Georgia and would have gone to Alabama, and then Tua would have stayed on the West Coast, what would the fortunes have been as far as for the University of Alabama?
Well, Kevin, you've spun quite a tale there. I got to say that I kind of lost track of that, even though it was well described. But what is our conclusion to all that?
Well, as far as that, hey, I'm glad that Fromm was Georgia and Tua was Alabama. But then on the shorter side, Mark, would just be this, and that is, do you think that if Jalen Hurts would have stayed for that grad year at the University of Alabama, the year that Tua was pretty much the incumbent as far as being the quarterback, that even by losing the LSU game and saying having Tua for the Auburn game that year, which you can't pretty much write in as far as, hey, you're going to throw 2 pick sixes in a game, that the committee would have been more receptive as far as for a Hurt-led Alabama team minus Tua for that particular year as far as being in that Final Four for the playoff.
So you're talking about the Iron Bowl, the 2 pick sixes by Mac Jones. They lose on a field goal that hits the upright, and otherwise they would have tied the game and lost 48-45, 45-42, whatever the score was, something in that range. So you're saying if Jalen Hurts is there, is that the scenario?
yes, Jalen stays, and then hey, as far as Tua getting hurt, hey, it's just a just a smooth transition as far as
Sure.
Jalen being in that position. Then you're looking at a one-loss Alabama team instead of a two-loss Alabama team being one of those four teams in the Final Four for the playoffs.
Well, then
Or
it's
do
a
you think
comparison.
Alabama still gets?
Well, I think in a lot of other seasons, they would have been a shoo-in to get a ton of consideration and entry into the playoff. But in that particular year, you had 3 undefeated teams. So they're in for sure. LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson. So it would have been a comparison between Oklahoma and Alabama. And of course, yeah, I thought Alabama was the better team, even with the second loss to Auburn. But in terms of earning the playoff spot, then you've got the conference championship with Oklahoma and the 1 loss versus a non-champion 1 loss. And we would have seen if I'm not going to try to make a speculation on what the committee would have determined. I just know that football people that like to evaluate the teams and determine who the best team is would have been clamoring for Alabama. The people that like to see the system work in regards to, well, we reward championships, we reward doing things the right way and going through the system, and we don't want 2 teams from the same conference, and we would like champions to go, then of course they would had been touting for Oklahoma to win and get to the playoff. But I have no idea. I am the last person that anybody should be asking what the committee should do, or, well, I can tell you what they should do. but in terms of theoretical situations on hypotheticals on what the committee would have done, I don't know. They jump all over the place. I think they're inconsistent.
Well, that's a whole nother show. You know that, Mark. That's a whole nother story as far as the committee being consistent or inconsistent or not having a clue. But I just need to get clarification on one thing, Mark, and that is in reference to SEC transfer rules. And right now, you're looking at Alabama. I'm going to go to Alabama last, but as far as Florida first. And then as far as I listened to the gentleman as far as from the Gators, and he had stated that Eric Gilbert would be the only question as far as him being eligible at the University of Florida is grade. And I thought that there was an issue as far as transferring within the conference, and not only within the conference period. That is not only as far as an NCAA rule. Say the NCAA signs off on it, but it also the SEC has to sign off on it. Because if that's the case, if Eric Gilbert is immediately eligible, then that means that Henry To'oTo'o should be immediately eligible if he transfers to Alabama. And so, I just need a little bit of clarification, because when it comes to University of Alabama, the only thing that we've heard has been a matter of, first, the NCAA has to check off on it. Then after that, Mr. Sankey has to check off on it as far as SEC commission.
Well, yeah, you just went down the protocol right there. So there is a rule that that the player would have to sit out if they're not awarded a waiver. But I am not going to claim to be an expert on this subject. I've not looked into it, but based on all the examples we've seen over the years, that if the team that loses the player and it's an in-conference transfer waives the year, then that particular player is eligible immediately.
That was my understanding, that the only way that you could immediately do it would be if you were a grad transfer. But if you have remaining years of eligibility, because as far as To'oTo'o is concerned, if he heads to Tuscaloosa, you can go on and I rarely say this, Mark, but you can book it as far as, hey, University of Alabama's going to win it. Because, the defense is going to have to carry him initially. And then after, as far as the defense carry him, the first part of the season, hey, the offense will be able to click in.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the grad transfer is an automatic. The transfer in conference, based on, I'm not basing this on reading the rules. I'm basing this on seeing example after example, is that as long as the institution that's losing the player waives the rule, then they are immediately eligible. And I think there's been it seems, and unless people can bring up other examples to the contrary, that there's been kind of a gentleman's agreement in the conference in recent years that they're just going to allow players to transfer and they're going to be okay. And they're going to allow them to play immediately.
Well, Mark, personally, do you feel that would be okay as far as a one-time rule? Or do you think that if you did the one-time rule this year, that it would just simply open Pandora's box?
Why would you do the one-time rule this year?
Well, that's what I'm asking, because that's been pretty much the question, the point that's been put out there is it's only going to be a one-time transfer that you allow the kids to do it this year, but then you won't allow them to do it in future years. So I'm like, if you're going to allow them to do it this year, then hey, little Johnny, little Tom is going to say, hey, I need to be able to do it in 22. I need to be able to do it in 23. I need to be able to do it in 24, etc. So why would you make the exception this year? I mean, I guess some might would say because of all the extenuating circumstances regarding eligibility and, nationally having to deal with COVID, I guess. So.
Yeah, I don't see what the connection is there. I don't see how the pandemic has affected that. There's already been a condition, and I agree with the condition given to players having that extra year of eligibility because of the compromised year in 2020. So that's given to everyone. But in terms of transferring, I'm not making the connection between this being a pandemic year and relaxing the rules on transferring.
I guess it's, some that's trying to, unfortunately, Mark, trying to circumvent the rules to their benefit. So they'll pull whatever they need to pull as far as to make it work for them. So I understand as far as the gentleman's agreement, not transferring because, I mean, hey, if a kid's transferring from Ohio State to Michigan, I wouldn't be okay with that. Just like if a kid was transferring from Michigan to Ohio State, I wouldn't be cool with that either. So
well, the last thing I'll say about it, Kevin, is that, yes, years ago, we used to see very few players transfer. And one of the big reasons was they routinely had to sit out a year. And recently, I would like to see the examples of the players that have had to sit out a year. It seems as though everybody's able to come up with some kind of disclaimer, hardship to excuse it. And we've gotten to a place, and this is one of the reasons why there's over 1,000 players in the transfer portal right now. The transfer portal is not being flooded because players are anticipating that they're going to have to sit out a year. They're anticipating that they're going to be immediately eligible. All right, Kevin, anything else?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand. And I agree. I mean, it's, I'll just be glad when we can go in and put the 20, well, as far as put this season when it comes to transferring and eligibility that we're able to, in some degree, to be able to put in the rearview mirror.
For
and
sure.
Just go in and just focus on, you make a commitment, stick with the commitment, and hey, follow the process and happily ever after. But as always, Mark, enjoyed as far as the conversation, enjoyed the listening, and hey, you take care and look forward to speaking with you the latter part of the week.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
I got to say, I didn't do Kevin much justice on those scenarios he brought forward, but I just got lost in the myriad of transferring there. But the last thing that he said about us moving on from 2020 and going back to the way things were, I would love to think that too, but that's not happening. The transfer portal is here and it's being used, and it is here to stay. So we do have a call in queue, but at the same time, we've got Lon Philip Sullivan on the line from LSU Odyssey. Maybe Lon has stepped away here for a second, but we want to get to him before we take this next call. I believe. Lon, are you there?
What's up, Mark? Yo.
What is up?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How's it going tonight?
That's all right. We're doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing well. So there's some big news on the Bayou. So this affects, this is all involving a lot of controversies that have been brewing, and a lot of rumors and a lot of investigation over the last several months, and you're going to have to pretty much lay it out for us where we stand on all this.
Well, actually, there's 2 investigations with Les Miles alone. There's 2013. That's the main one. There's supposedly a secret settlement that he paid to a student to silence her how do I put this? Her allegations of his harassment is what Brooks Kubina and Andrea Gallo wrote in the Advocate. They described his conduct as harassment. He paid an undisclosed settlement to this woman, and that has been released through the Hughes Blackwell investigative firm, who LSU hired to do the independent investigation into the school's handling of Title IX cases. And from Hughes Blackwell's findings, that's what they found. But then also there's a Taylor Johnson report, I believe it was the name of that law firm. I just want to make sure I get that right. Or Taylor Porter, perhaps. Let me make sure I get that right. There was an earlier investigation from Les Miles, where back in let's see, his Oklahoma State days as well, he had already been involved in a controversy at his previous head coaching job at Oklahoma State University. This is according to the Advocate. A 2013 Sports Illustrated investigation uncovered that some female student hostesses at OSU had sex with prospects during recruiting visits. Hostess programs have been used at other schools, including LSU. According to Sports Illustrated, Miles had a central role in vetting candidates for Oklahoma State's program. So there's a lot of stuff going on with LSU. And that law firm is Taylor Porter as well. So you've got 2 different investigations. Hush Blackwell's their investigation found a lot of different things about their report is going to be released in about a week, I think, about what they found with LSU's handling. But then there's also these Taylor Porter documents that are showing, really, it goes all back to what I've said the whole time, Mark, and I said this on your show. I believe that this is all about a culture Les Miles and Joe Oliva created in that athletic department that seemed to survive for quite some years until the last few. And it seemed the Drake Davis case was the last, and the Ray Parker as well. Ray Parker, I should say, would be the last case. It just seems like there's just some craziness going on, and it seems like everything's about to come out, and we're going to see how everything was handled. But, according to my barometer, I did not feel that Les Miles and Joe Oliva, who was the AD at the time during the Miles tenure, were doing a good job at all. I felt like it was an absolute circus in the discipline department, and it just seemed some oddball stuff was going on, and this is no shock to me. But it is quite an intense step for a lot of people to imagine. But this is something I've been kind of thinking, had an instinct of for a while, that something wasn't off. Something was off with Les. Something wasn't right, and that's what we're hearing. And there's just too many reports, and it's very vindicating for Coach Ed Orgeron, who is starting to kind of be painted with the lion's share of the blame for the Title IX investigations. But yeah.
We got Lon Phillip Sullivan on the line from LSU Odyssey, so join him and the rest of the crew over there covering LSU athletics. So I remember when Sports Illustrated posted that 2013 story, and it was detailed, it was lengthy, it was exhaustive, it was alarming and shocking. And I remember waiting and thinking, okay, this is all going to blow up. This is Sports Illustrated. This is when people actually went out and bought these Sports Illustrated magazines off the shelf. Like, this was a big deal. And then nothing resulted. And I have since forgotten about it to a certain extent until you just brought it up. So my question to start this out would be: is there any connection between these two incidents, these two alleged incidents, or the two stories, I should say? There are many incidents involved, but the two stories that you cited.
Oh, you mean with Les?
Yes.
With Les specifically, I would think so. I mean, obviously, Oklahoma State, what happened there is a whole different issue, but it seems with Les, there's just a lot of, the bulk of the Title IX investigations came during his tenure as well. Not only that, the players as well, but I think Ray Parker, Drake Davis were the only two. And I think Ed Ingram as well, but Ed Ingram was cleared of those charges, so we can't really count that one. But so you got two, and then you've got a lot of craziness from the Les Miles era, especially Darius Geis, as we well know. And it seemed like Ed Orgeron was kind of, put with the brunt of that in that USA Today piece, and Les kind of got away with one there, and in a lot of people's eyes. And so I kind of feels more justified than, I don't feel like LSU fans are afraid for Les Miles here. I think LSU fans sensed something was off from just what I'm hearing.
So I would think that even though this is extremely serious, that with all the main players in charge, the culprits off campus, no longer affiliated with the university, that what is going to be the ramifications of this? You're not going to penalize, although this happens every time that there is periphery collateral damage. But in this case, nobody's left from that regime.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing though. LSU still has Verge Osbury on the staff.
Okay.
And he had texts from Drake Davis admitting to punching a woman, and he did nothing about it. He didn't report it. He did nothing about it. He sat on those texts, and he reported them later after the fact, which doesn't count in my book. You act when you hear something like that. It's despicable, and he's still on staff. So LSU maybe get punished for that type of thinking, having Verge Osbury there. Maybe the optics of that doesn't look too good. But the rest of it would feel a little harsh if this current regime were to be, banned from bowl games anymore after we were already banned from last year's. I think it'd be a little too much until we see the entirety of the investigation. And, we'll get that from the Hush Blackwell independent review, but we also need to see how the rest of this plays out. If LSU can find who actually, did this, who were the specific people responsible for covering this up. I have a few names. You got the Verge Osbury, Sharon Jones is a name that was thrown around a bunch, and I cannot find any evidence to confirm anything that Sharon Jones did. So I don't know if USA Today just lumped her in there. But I can't find any evidence for any wrongdoing from Sharon Jones's side. So that's just to say that to give her a little credit there for Sharon Jones, because I feel like until I see some of that evidence of her wrongdoing, that's kind of weird that her name is involved. But Verge's, he has no excuses for what Verge Osbury did. But interesting times. I don't see LSU getting some type of multi-year bowl ban or some 10+ scholarship rip. They've already cut our scholarships pretty hardcore. They've already limited our recruiting time pretty hardcore. There's a lot of barometers, a lot of hoops that LSU are already having to jump through right now, and I just can't see any more being tacked onto that. But that's just me thinking logically. I'm not thinking like the NCAA. And the NCAA, knowing them, they've been wanting to punish LSU for quite some time. This is like the third time they've gotten the FBI involved with us. And and it's the first time that it really, should have been, the FBI should have been involved. This is the first time, and we'll see. We'll see, Mark. It's a really messed up situation. I can't see LSU being banned from going to the college football playoff. I can't see us being banned from a postseason bowl. I just can't see it. I can't see it. I can't see a death penalty type penalty. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't think we're venturing off into that that type of territory with the death penalty. But as soon as you confirm that there's a member of the current staff that's prominent in all this, then I think that there could always be some pretty harsh ramifications. Now, has anybody from the LSU side had any kind of rebuttal or any kind of response to this outside of we're going to cooperate with the investigation?
Les Miles, when he was called by, I believe it was the Advocate, he said that's not true to the allegations by the woman that, there was a settlement in 2013. He tried to claim that wasn't true. LSU, as for themselves, I actually sent a Freedom of Information request to them myself for these sealed documents, and they tried to claim there wasn't any sealed documents, and gave me some type of excuse as to why they didn't have to produce the documents, and it's just a waiting game to just to stall until we run out of time, and they finally have to send them, and then will it be relevant by that time, or that's what they're trying to I think do here. And whoever in the athletic department is in charge of whatever's going down, I think that's who LSU needs to remove. It's toxic, and it's probably the last stay over from the Les Miles era.
Got Lon Philip Sullivan on the line from LSU Odyssey, so join him for coverage on this breaking and now unfolding story involving Les Miles and others, both formerly but mostly previously running LSU football. Let's talk some football. Lon, what do you think?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Do we know when spring practice starts yet?
March 14th.
Okay. March 14th.
That is the day.
Okay.
It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome.
A full spring, finally.
Hopefully a full spring. Now, outside of that quarterback competition, which you can certainly respond to, but outside of the quarterback competition, what are you going to be looking out for? What do you think position units really are important here?
I quickly just immediately go to safeties and linebackers. Just wide receiver, I feel like that's a situation that's going to play itself out, just like receiver. I think the iron will sharpen the iron, and the best players will start in those positions, regardless of who's your favorite or any of that. I feel like those players will take over those spots. But safety and linebacker, that's where LSU had the biggest trouble on defense last year, and it cost us big. 124th out of 128th ranked in the country in total defense. That is an absolute joke. And it was all because there was just such a soft middle of the field with those safeties and those linebackers. You could just pick on those guys. And this year, Blake Baker, I got to give total props to my man Carter the Power for bringing out this point. Blake Baker said in his introductory press conference that he knows the right technique for the linebackers, and that he noticed that LSU's linebackers last year were not playing with the right technique, obviously. But it's up to him now to show us exactly what he feels linebackers should be doing. I have a viewpoint. I know exactly what they were doing wrong last year, but I want to see what Blake Baker feels they were doing wrong last year. I want to see if Blake Baker execute and get the right linebackers out there. I want to see Micah Baskerville out there. I want to see Mike Jones Jr. out there. I'm hearing that Micah Baskerville is already favored to be that Mike linebacker. But with the safety positions, that is just really wide open. You've got Todd Harris there, who's coming back for a second senior year. He was coming back from a knee injury last year, so you could excuse some rust there. He still forced 3 turnovers, 2 picks, a forced fumble, just punching that ball out. And then you got Mo Hampton, who had a really bad 2020, but an awesome 2019 freshman year. Even started a few games and played a bunch in the semifinal against Oklahoma, SEC championship game against Georgia, title game against Clemson. Mo Hampton was in those games and performed admirably. I think he was just put in some horrible positions last year. Everybody who stepped on the field, it seemed, who played as safety or linebacker for LSU, was put in a horrible position at some point or another, whether it seemed like it was their mistake or a play calling or it just was an absolute confused mess out there. And that's what the defensive coordinator, Durante Jones, is trying to clean up there. And it's actually Durante Jones who's going to be calling the shots with the safeties. So I'm looking for freshman Sage Ryan to step up to the table and maybe take a starting position there. But not at safety, actually, nickel. Because here's the thing. Durante Jones is going to want to run a 4-2-5 base most of the time. Not just a 4-3, 2 safety, 2. It's just too easy to pick apart, as we found out last year with LSU, just doing that 4-3-4 base every time. It's just too easy. I think you're going to see that 4-2-5 more than anything with Durante Jones, and Sage Ryan can play that nickel position beautifully. We could even see Jay Ward, who played corner the last 2 years and played fantastically there, played like an All-American, Coach Orgeron said the last few games, and in my eyes too as well. Jay Ward, he could move to free safety if need be. He's got the coverage abilities. He's got the range. He's got the tackling ability too. He put up 8 tackles, I believe, 6 solo against Florida. This guy racks them up. So safety, linebacker, those are the positions I'm looking at. Defense, those are the spots. Those are the spots LSU can just be destroyed at. Any defense, no matter how many high octane superstars you have on your roster, you will be picked apart if your linebackers and your safeties are crap. That is the modern game right now. Safeties, linebackers, high quality play there. LSU's got to get back to it. We were spoiled with Grant Delpit, with Tyrann Mathieu. Just the list goes on and on of great safety. Craig Steltz, he was my favorite. Craig Steltz, LaRon Landry, he was another one of my favorites. Ryan Clark, another favorite. The names go on and on at LSU of great safeties, and so I want to see that great safety tradition get back to it as a former safety myself.
Sage Ryan is the second-rated safety in this class, although he's not going to be on campus until the summer. You do have 9 early enrollees who will be suiting up at the team here in about a month. And so out of those 9, who do you think can make an immediate impact?
Well, first off, actually, Sage Ryan actually told LSUodyssey.com, a.k.a. me, that Sage Ryan told us that Durante Jones called him and spoke with him at length. Even though he's not an early enrollee, even though he's not there, he's a freshman, Durante called him. And, Sage said he was down to earth, and it was awesome. But moving on, what was your question again? Sorry.
Basically, out of these 9 enrollees who are going to be on campus and in spring practice, who you really are excited about contributing early?
Mason Smith. Interior DT. Joseph Evans is in his way. Jacobian Guillory is in his way. Eric Taylor, I think he's going to take that starting spot next to Jaquelin Roy at DT. I think it's going to be Jaquelin Roy, Mason Smith, those at the interior defensive tackles, and then you're going to have B.J. Ojolari, Ali Gay at defensive ends, and then of course you got Andre Anthony coming off the bench. But Mason Smith, I could see him be an absolute freak of nature as a freshman. Landon Jackson as well. He will have to prove that he's 100% recovered from that ankle injury, though. That is a caveat. Derek Davis Jr., he is an early enrollee that I just hear just great things about. Won day after the next. Just that this guy is outdoing seniors in the weight room, that he has better, longer stamina than most of the fastest guys on the team, that he's just a really strong, really headstrong, really present cat for a freshman. He's just got this vibe that is really exciting the coaches. Garrett Nussmeier, of course, at quarterback. I mean, if there's ever a freshman who could steal a starting job, this is the guy. The only thing that would prevent that, I feel, is just how talented these sophomore quarterbacks, Max Johnson and then TJ Finley. And then, of course, you got Miles, who those 2 years of eligibility are so tempting to ride with. He could be the next Burrow with the numbers he's putting up. Well, maybe Burrow light. We'll put it that way. It's just a different version of Burrow.
Yeah, let's amend that statement.
Yeah. Burrow light, but still, hey, he was on course for 55 touchdowns.
Extra light, maybe.
He
55 touchdowns.
Hey, he was on course for 55 touchdowns. That's what the numbers were saying. He was putting up ridiculous numbers through the first 3 games. And actually, his numbers were not too far off Joe Burrow's first 3 games of 2019. It was only off by like 11 yards and a touchdown or something like that. But we'll see. We'll see what Brennan can do. He could be interesting. It is very tempting to just go with Miles Brennan because he has such a fantastic arm. He knows the offense so well. He's so comfortable there. But Max Johnson, I don't know how you could turn away what he did and how he finished the season. This guy, there's something magical about the way he plays football, the way he grinds. And he was fantastic on 3rd and 4th down. He made some huge plays. He was 6 of 7 on 4th down opportunities, scoring 3 touchdowns, 2 of them passing touchdowns to Kayshon Boutte against Ole Miss, and another one was a rushing touchdown in the same game. But the cat, he is just unbelievable. TJ Finley actually had the best 3rd down percentage of the 3 quarterbacks with 41%. But Max Johnson was right behind at 39. Miles Brennan was down at 23% on 3rd down. And those stats are homegrown stats from LSUodyssey.com. Right there in our quarterbacks piece, it's all about the greatest of all time quarterbacks from in LSU history. And you got to say it. On talent, this is. We'll see how they produce, as far as championships and victories. But as far as talent, this is the 4 best quarterbacks, ever in a single season in one room in LSU history.
Miles Brennan's threw 11 touchdowns in 3 games. If you extrapolate that out, do the math. If he gets to play 15 games in a season like Joe Burrow did, I just never thought I would be making that statement, but it would have been a whole lot of touchdown passes.
I'm telling you, bro.
All SEC opponents too.
That's why I said what I said, man. I know I love LSU, but I'm saying what I'm saying because I believe it, not just because I wanna kiss some butt or because I'm talking to some player's family and they say, "Oh, can you say this about our son or whatever?" No. In fact, very rarely have people ever asked me to do that, and I've never done it. Everything just comes from the ether, as I put it. But yeah, Miles Brennan, he was fantastic. And LSU fans, I see LSU fans actually being more comfortable with the idea of Miles Brennan starting this year than they were last year. It's very interesting. You heard a lot of let's go with the freshman last year. And this year, I'm not hearing anything of it. I'm hearing a lot of support for Miles Brennan because I think he showed, that undeniable toughness, that grind. But I tell you what, this dude right now, Mark, he is the thickness. He is the thickness. He is so thick right now. This guy, I don't know what his weight is. It's got to be at least 240 right now, 238. He has gotten way bigger, and he just looks like a different guy. I think he's been through a transformation.
Do we have any news on the recruiting trail for 2022? Any targets that are leaning
Well, right now I feel Kendrick Law. He could be a guy who's going to be leaning to LSU. Malik Agbo, offensive lineman. I've heard that there's been some trepidation that he could be the next Tristan Lee, that he's just fishing around for his next school. I don't believe that. I feel like he really does want to come to LSU. Earl Little Jr., cornerback. I feel that he is heavily leaning to LSU. That is not only what I've been hearing, but that it was what my instincts were telling me, is that Earl Little Jr. would want to make that move. Another Florida corner. We just picked one up with Demarius McGee. It seems almost every recruiting class we're getting Corey Raymond's pulling in a corner from Florida. LaTerrence Welch. That he's already committed with LSU, but I just wanted to put a name in there. Watch out for that guy. He's just going to be so sick. Okay, just watch out for him. Denver Harris. I'm hearing a lot of stuff about LSU being warm in there. A lot, LSU being in the mix. I'm not too sure what to believe, but out of Houston, LSU very fertile recruiting in Houston. I know we've made an impact with Denver. I know we've at least been right there in his top schools. So he's a brilliant corner. I think LSU, a 5-star as well. I think LSU is a good shot at him. Harold Perkins, outside linebacker. This guy is one of my friend AD. This is one of his favorite players. 5-star to Cypress, Texas. This guy, really, really good player. Let's see who else there is. Yeah, and as I said before, Kendrick Law. That guy, he is a versatile dude. He's one of those jack of all trades players that LSU always tries to get. Receiver, DB, returner. He can do all three. Kendrick Law. Don't be shocked if you see him also wearing purple and gold as well.
Very good, Lon. Appreciate you stopping by, and encourage everybody to head on over to lsuodyssey.com with Lon Phillips Sullivan. Lon, we appreciate it.
Mark, take it easy. Go Tigers. Peace out.
All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, in our Wednesday night call-in show featuring you. You produced the show. Got a call coming in on Ohio State and Michigan by Mark, the caller, who's saying, I know you're not talking about Ohio State, Michigan, but that's what we want to talk about. Well, let's keep in mind, you produce the show. I suggest topics, thought we would talk some spring football. I bring on some guests. You produce the show, though. Your calls or anything about college football, there is nothing that's, it's all fair game. It's all fair game. So let's hear from Mark. He's still available.
Hey, Mark. I'm still here, Mark. Yeah, I have to make an honest point with your show, and then I'm going to ask you a couple questions. First of all, I think you have a phenomenal show, and of course, I always call myself the enemy, but I do that facetiously. And when I caught on to your show, Rogers, I said, "My gosh, this is fantastic!" I listen to you all the time, and I'm one of those rare guys. You had some other people call in. I played Division I football, so I know a little bit more than the average person. And so the question to you, Mark, is I live and die for Michigan, and I'm so sick of getting pounded by Ohio State. The odds are against us this year. What is your percentage of odds that Michigan could beat Ohio State? That's question number one. And question number two, if we get beat, and we probably will again by the Buckeyes, will Jim Harbaugh step down? Because in Jim's position, they're not going to tell him you're fired. That will not come out in the paper, but they'll, behind closed doors, they'll say, Jim, we want you to go. So tell the whole world that you're going to step down and take something else. And so those two questions, and again, you're very sagacious with your opinions, and I really, really like your show.
I appreciate that, Mark. Thank you so much for the support. I believe now that you described yourself, I believe I have a beat on who you are in the...
Yeah, the enemy. I always say I'm the enemy.
Yes, you're the enemy. But it's a very friendly rivalry, at least between the two of us. So I appreciate the call and the comments. You're very nice. So here are my thoughts about Michigan
Thank you.
football.
Okay.
Michigan is a top 10 to 15 roster in college football, and Ohio State has a top 2 to 3 roster in college football, which is it's fairly decided. It is decided. Is it substantial? Yes, it's even substantial, but it's not to the degree that Michigan should not be competing with Ohio State on the field to the degree that they have failed to over the last 2 games for sure, because Ohio State's not going out and obliterating the likes of Wisconsin and Iowa and Penn State in their matchups. Sure, they may win some of those games by blowouts, but typically those are pretty competitive games. So there is something there is a development issue, there's a psychological issue, there's a game preparation issue there between Ohio State and Michigan in particular. I was on Steve Dace's Michigan podcast yesterday, and I just went down a litany of what I thought were issues in the current configuration of this coaching staff that I'm not understanding the strategy there with the 6 new coaching hires, none of which have coached that particular position anytime formerly. So they have 6 new position coaches who have never coached the position in which they're placing them. That doesn't seem to be a recipe for success. The secondary,
it's rare when that happens. Right. Go ahead.
The secondary recruiting, meaning the defensive backs that were recruited and signed in this 2021 class, is a bit curious as well, considering that Michigan secondary in 2020 played about as poorly as I remember a Michigan secondary playing, going back to the worst teams that Rich Rod fielded, the 3-9 and the 5-7 teams.
I remember those dark days.
And so they didn't play well this past season, and defensive back had been a strength in Michigan over Harbaugh's first 5 seasons. They play that poorly in the secondary, and their recruiting haul brought in the 43rd rated cornerback and the 39th rated safety. Now, that is no knock on either one of those 2 individuals, Jaden McBurrows and Rod Moore. They're both, they could, either one of them could turn out to be, there are 3 stars walking around all over the place in the NFL. But the odds say that they have not brought in a game changer at defensive back, and they only brought in 2 out of this class. So I think that's a bit alarming too. Now, looking at the 2 particular teams for a matchup in November this year, I said what I said out of the gate about the talent discrepancy, because if it was anybody else in the Big Ten, I would tell you that Ohio State had a 80 to 85% chance of winning the game. But for whatever reason, they have this this spell cast over Michigan. So I would think it's even higher than that. I think you've got a 10%. No, I think you've got a less than 10% chance of, meaning if those teams could play 10 times, Ohio State's winning 9 for sure, and maybe the 10th game. I think you've got a 5 to 10% chance of winning this game.
I kind of hate to agree with you, but I think you're right. I think when I look back, because I got hooked, I used to be a Michigan State fan in the 60s. I'm showing my age. But Mark, I got hooked in the 69 game, which was the biggest, greatest Michigan game against Ohio State in my life, when we upset Jim Otis and that team, which was phenomenal. I got hooked since those days. And I even played in the big house for spring football at Eastern. But anyway, it's driving me crazy. And I look at this. I also, Mark, in my day, I think you can actually mentally, Michigan's broken down. There's been times in which, in the last 20 years, we've had a better team. We were actually favored when Jim Tressel kind of started it. We were favored by 7 points against Ohio State, Jim Tressel's first year. And I was laughing. That was a big point spread back then. And Tressel started the whole thing, in my opinion. And I said, wow, they just dominated us. And it just really, it's just driving me crazy. And again, I know you're in Ohio State and most of your callers, and I respect that. there's one thing about the great college football fans. I respect Ohio State, and you'll never hear me speaking with horrible, disparaging words about Ohio State. I respect that program, and I just wish that Michigan was at a level with Ohio State. And there are many factors, and that's why I really enjoy watching or listening to your show, and I listen to it whenever I can. And when you say, you're the college football guy, you are. I wouldn't, and I don't want to be negative. I wouldn't waste my time if I didn't have respect towards your opinions and your sage advice and what you know. You're way above just about everybody. And so anyway, I just want to tell you that. And I'll always be listening. And I just, oh my goodness gracious, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm pulling for a miracle. And I don't think I'm going to get it. And I'm just wondering, when is the beating going to stop? And there's one more thing I got to say. And I think you brought it up a couple times, that I would never get tired. This is some of the old fans. I'm still an old dinosaur that I really loathe Ohio State as far as getting beat. If we could beat Ohio State 1,000 times in a row, I would love it. I would love it. I don't want to see it turn. And I can remember the Cooper days. My Ohio State friends, they were going berserk. And they said, Mark, they were talking to me, aren't you tired of beating us? And I said, 1,000 more times isn't enough. And that's how I feel. But anyway, I had to voice my opinion. Hang up and let other people talk to you. You have a great show.
It's always appreciated, Mark. Thank you so much for commenting in the comments section on a regular basis, and I appreciate you calling. You are welcome anytime. And you know what? You say something about this Buckeye contingent we have here. I get more views on Michigan videos than any other team.
Yeah. I think, you know what? I see that because I look at that, Mark, whenever I can on my computer, and I'm going, there's a Wolverine fan. There's another one. There's another one. And then when I always make a nice comment, but it's my feeling. And then a Buckeye fan will come on and, they tell me that I need a brain lobotomy. And they're probably right. It's all in jest. It's all respect. I've never seen anybody really nasty. And no, I've never really seen that. I've seen some people that drone on too long, maybe a phone call or this or that, and you're so polite to people. But I still respect it, and I still like to hear people's opinions because that's what it's all about. And just because I disagree with you or I hope you're wrong, I certainly respect it, and I'm never rude. But I'm really glad I got through. I talked to you one time. It was very brief, about maybe 9 months or a year ago. But I'm really glad I got through, and I'll continue. And here again, I'm not done. I mean, as far as down the road, the next time we beat you, I'm going to call you 1,000,000 times to get on your talk show. Trust me. But that may be 20 years from now.
Call anytime. It might be 20 years from now. Call anytime.
No.
And you have yourself a great night, and I appreciate you waiting as well.
Yeah, Mark, thank you very much, and that's no problem. It was well worth it. And hey, Mark, go blue. I'll see you.
All right. Good stuff from Michigan fan Mark. Let's go to Stephen M. Smith. I believe this is going to be on the call right here. If we can get this to activate. There we go. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I believe we've got Stephen on the line.
Hi, Mark. This is Steven. I don't know. Do you watch Josh Pate on 247 Sports at all? He has his YouTube channel, and then he kind of goes Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday with YouTube.
Yeah, I don't have much opinion there. I'm sure that Josh does a great job, or I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I speculate that I'm sure he does a fine job over there. I've seen bits and pieces through the last several years that he's been on, but I can't say that I watch it.
Okay. He recently had a segment about how the process at Iowa State, where he was talking about how a lot of people in administrative levels in other teams really don't like Iowa State because they prove something that other programs and other administrations want to say to their fans, just say that they're not doing well, and it is actually doing less with more. So what I'm trying to say is that with Iowa State, with the facilities they have and what they do recruiting wise, they're doing more with what they got. Well, they're doing less with what they have, and they're still making results out of what they are putting out in the field, despite the recruiting class, despite the facilities, despite the sheer number of revenue difference between, Iowa State and Texas. So, for example, he brought up that Iowa State only made $51 million in revenue, but then Texas made $230 million in revenue. And they have all the facilities, they have all the places where analysts are to be able to recruit players, be able to see the footage differently than what you would normally see at Iowa State. And he was saying along the lines that a lot of the teams that are struggling right now, like Tennessee, are saying that they need results within 3 years. Well, you can't get results in 3 years because you are trying to push something that you're trying to push something that you think you can get more results if you have all the facilities and all the money, but it doesn't work out that way. You have to change a culture in a certain program to be able to get what you want. And what he was talking about is that the culture that Matt Campbell has started at Iowa State is the model that everybody should be looking at further to be able to get actual progress and growth in a program so they are successful. And I feel like that with what the Michigan caller was saying, I feel like that's part of the issue, is that they do not have a culture set in place that makes it to where you have teams that are being very successful in what they should be doing.
Yeah, so he raises some good points. I do think in scanning the nation that you can come up with a few other examples of programs that have similar talent and recruiting issues, but they've been able to overcome those. But they have histories of winning, which helps. So I'm thinking about Stanford. I'm thinking about Washington State, which doesn't have much of a history of winning. I'm thinking about Wisconsin. I'm thinking about Michigan State under Mark D'Antonio. So if you look at the recruiting rankings and look at, in the case of Washington State, Stanford, well, Washington State, not Stanford, Washington State and Wisconsin, there's similar talent to what Iowa State has in the backyard for those particular schools, but they've been able to overcome that. Now, all those schools, excluding Washington State, have a history of winning, at least during pockets, in Stanford's case, of their history, and that helps. I think there are probably two other elements here that have caused Iowa State to excel. One would be, so we know that the recruiting rankings mean something. We know that the 5 stars and the 4 stars win the football games. But we also know that there are plenty of 3-star and 2-star examples, even 2-star. People point to 3 stars, but there are 2 stars starting in college football, in major college football, and being impact players. So beyond the ability to go out, look at the star rankings, look at the top 10 players in the nation at that position, and go out and get those guys and sell them the school and the football program and the NFL prospectus and all that. Being able to find those guys that are further down the ladder, and being able to find the ones that you're going to be able to develop. So having an eye for talent beyond just the obvious. So all the schools in the country can see this guy's the best quarterback in the country, and then he's second best and he's third best. But the Iowa States and the Matt Campbells and his staffs is able to point out, okay, this guy's the 42nd rated quarterback in the country, but we like A, B, and C, and we believe that we're going to be able to develop him into a top 10 quarterback. So that, I think that's one thing that they do extremely well. The other thing is that once they get them on campus, those particular types of players, they're able to execute what they saw. They were able to execute the development that they saw that other programs, pretty much Michigan would be the culprit of this. They pretty much churn out the same player that they recruited. the guy is about as talented as he's going to be and is as productive as his talent dictates at a place like Michigan. And if he moves on to the NFL, it's because he showed up as pretty much an NFL prospect as a freshman at Michigan. But Iowa State is developing NFL players who didn't look like NFL prospects when they showed up in Ames, Iowa as freshmen. So the recruiting the diamonds in the rough and then developing them into impact players.
Yeah. I kind of I see where that's going, but I also think that if you have a great atmosphere as a university / program of either football, basketball, or any type of D1 program, I think that goes a long way in making people feel that they are valued, and then that it makes people want to work harder for for the same mission that everybody else wants to work for. And I think if you look at all the programs across, I think, the United States, and you look at how both Alabama and Ohio State have that kind of culture where everybody kind of is working towards the same goal, but then you look at other programs that have great histories, but then are having issues like Nebraska and Tennessee. They don't have a great culture set up in a point where everybody's working towards the same goal. Everybody's working towards different goals, but it's not helping the football. It's not helping their program in the way that it's supposed to for it to be successful. And I think that's a big part of why you see, like Iowa State now, where 5 or 6 years ago, you would say Iowa State's not going to go anywhere because they haven't won more than 6 games in a year or less than that. So they were considered like bottom tier program. So now when you get a person that actually focuses on making sure that their players are connected and they are trying to connect with the players' families and making sure they get the right coaching staff and everything, I think that makes a big difference in how you make a program better. I don't think winning, I do think winning does help a lot, but I think having those losses help mature a team more to make them more cohesive and reflect on what they could be doing and making themselves better along the way. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, I guess, more or less. If that's kind of how I see it, but I could be wrong.
No, I think you're saying a lot of valuable stuff there. I think that so what you're talking about in building a culture has to do with balancing love and support with accountability. So when you allow your kids just to eat chocolate cake and run around the house and play video games all the time, they're going to love that. They're going to love that culture, or they think they do, but they're really not going to respect it or respect you. And really, they're going to be miserable in the long run. On the flip side,
Right.
If you show them no love, you don't play with them, you don't help them, you just have a bunch of rules and regulations, and you make them go to bed on time, and they have to do chores and they have to do all the hard stuff, but you don't reinforce that with showing them how much you care for them and rewarding them for a job well done by giving them leisure time and fun activities. Then you're going to lose them because they're going to be they're going to be exasperated by that. They're going to be bitter because you're not showing them the love and support to reward their efforts in trying to please you. So that balance, I think that works on an athletic team as well, where you're showing, hey, we love you, we care for you, we want you to develop as a student, as a man, as a football player. We're here to support you. We're going to have fun. We're going to do all these things, but you're also here to be to grow into a young man. You're going to be accountable for all these things. You're going to be accountable to the guy on either side of you in the weight room and on the football field. And so you're going to have to do the right things, but there's a give and take here. And I think that and it's not an easy thing to do. It's an easy thing to talk about, but when you're dealing with young people, it's an easy it's easy for me to again discuss, but to be able to connect with each and every person to get that end result out of them, but to balance the love and the support with the accountability, I think is key to having a successful culture. And I think about Dabo Swinney, and I think about Clemson, and he and Pete Carroll at USC seem to be the first wave of the new type of coach who build a different type of program. The Nick Sabans and the Urban Meyers can walk into a living room and just throw down the national championship resume and get the 5 stars to come to their school because they're basically just selling, we're going to win, you're going to be a star, and you're going to go to the NFL. But Dabo Swinney and Pete Carroll were the first guys on the sidelines that were running around and high-fiving the players and laughing and dancing in the locker room with the players to basically say, we're in this together. And that has been, the approach of the modern coach that is connected with the modern athlete.
Yeah. I just thought, I just wanted to see what your perspective on that was, because I thought what Josh Tate said was really interesting. He has a video to that on YouTube, and I think you should look into that and see if you agree or disagree with him on that. Another thing I wanted to ask is, since spring practice has started, how do you think they are doing spring practice since we're still with COVID issues and restrictions? Are you still thinking they are under the same restrictions where they were under when they were playing the season, or do you think there are different restrictions now compared to what was last season?
Oh, that's a great question, because I haven't looked into that. And I've had conversations with 5 to 10 different people that are beat writers that follow teams that have started spring practice, and they haven't mentioned anything being out of the ordinary. So I don't know. I wouldn't think that there would be any protocols that have been altered in any way since the football season. I would think that they're being tested on a regular basis, that the sanitary conditions are, and all the guidelines and conditions are pretty much what they were.
Okay. Last question. Do you have an idea what your top 25 is right now with start spring practice, or do you wait until the actual season to start?
Say that. It's roaming around here in this stack of papers. Here they are. I do. I have had these notes for I don't know how long. I was going to cut this video right after the national championship game with my way too early top 25. So it's right there, but we need to produce that video. So yeah, I do have an idea of what my top 25 is. It's looking right at me. So we'll have to get on that.
Okay. Okay. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your night, and thank you for letting me talk. So I hope you have a good night, and thank you for your work.
Yeah, call back anytime. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right.
Well, this is the man that gives
voice of college football. We got David on the line. Hello,
yes,
David.
indeed, the man that gives Yes, how are you? The man that gives college football its voice. How are you, Mark Rogers?
I'm doing well, David. What's going on tonight?
Not much. I called you the other day. I think your audio was having some issues when I tried to give you my players that I wish were still playing that one day. As far as when you put out that one segment.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say, that was an interesting segment, and I did enjoy it. By the way, that was something that was pretty fun.
Well, just to get it out there for everyone who unfortunately couldn't hear it. Again, yes. The topic was, what player would you bring back to play college football for your team if you could? And you threw out Maurice Clarett, Eddie George.
Right. Well, I went the route of saying that the players that missed a year at Ohio State, Keith Byers not playing in 85, Chris Carter not playing in 87.
That's right.
Maurice Clarett not playing in 2003. Those were kind of my examples of players I wish that I could have seen play those years.
Absolutely. So you took a different tint on it, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
And wanted to be able to insert those players in those exact times. I was thought my initial thought was bringing back a player from yesteryear to play today for your team. But yeah, those are three good examples of Ohio State stars that were missed those particular seasons. Yep.
I'll give you one player, Mark, real quick, to answer that question, like to fully answer it, that I wish was playing in today's Buckeye offense. And it's hands down. I would love to see Ted Ginn play in Ohio State's offense with kind of the type of offenses that they run in the quarterback play. That would be interesting.
Yeah, sure would be. You know,
with his speed.
With Ted Ginn Jr.'s running style combined with just the sheer speed, he had such a distinct look. You know, most of these guys just look pretty similar. You know, you
right.
watch a football game, and if you could take off the names and the numbers and the colors, you wouldn't necessarily know, okay, this is him and that's him and that's him. But Ted Ginn, my goodness, whether it was on a reverse or whether he would try to hit that corner on a kickoff return, he just had a very distinct look that for the first several games, at least my response was, this just looks different. And he looks like he's running at a different speed, which he was, than everybody else on the field. And he would beat guys to the corner that you didn't think he would be able to beat to the corner until you got used to watching him play. And you'd think, yeah, he's going to be able to turn that corner.
Right. Yeah. I mean, actually, I ended up having a much longer NFL career than I thought he would. He played like 14, 15 years in the NFL almost. And, you know, you think about it, it was really, he did a lot of his damage as a return guy pretty much. I mean, he had a couple of okay years at wide receiver, but mostly as a return guy. And you could see that in college. I wanted to get to, so, by the way, you made a really good observation, a comparison I've made before. I once said that I thought Dabo Sweeney was a Southern Pete Carroll. So I found that interesting that you just said that.
There it is. Great minds, David.
So, yeah, there you go. I posted that comparison once, and I was once you said that, I found that really interesting. So, hey, I wanted to bring up a point you had mentioned. You were talking with one of your Michigan bloggers the other day, and you guys were talking about the quarterbacks. Ohio State not producing, let's say, a successful NFL quarterback. And I must say, I mean, obviously, I'm in agreement with you as far as, you know, a quarterback that's really had a lot of success in the NFL. They basically had guys that have played in the NFL, but really have been journeymen and haven't necessarily been like a star starting quarterback in the NFL. Although I must say, and I think you agree with me, up until about 4 or 5 years ago, Mark, if we listed all the quarterbacks that won a national championship, I would say up until about 2015, I think we would find a lot of average to kind of pretty good college quarterbacks, but a lot of quarterbacks over that time frame that weren't really successful NFL quarterbacks. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, because of the way the game has changed and offense has changed the game, it's just so much more important to have that caliber of a quarterback. And I think that's been borne out by exactly what you're talking about, the national championship and the college football playoff teams versus if you took a slice of 1980 to 2005 and looked at college football national champions, how many NFL quarterbacks did you actually have? And I mean NFL quarterback. I'm not talking about Craig Krenzel, who started 4 games. You know, I'm talking about guys that didn't have to be stars, but were starters. Just starting with Buck Bellew, the 1980 national championship quarterback at Georgia. He was nothing close to an NFL quarterback. And we could take it on with Homer Jordan the next year with Clemson. And then Blackledge at Penn State he was a first-round pick, but Penn State threw the ball pretty successfully. And if we marched through
Yep.
the 80s and 90s, yeah, we wouldn't see a whole lot of NFL quarterbacks versus what is required of the position now to succeed. Yep.
Right. Yeah, even your more kind of like dynastic teams, like the Miami teams of the 80s to the early 90s. Yeah, I would say, Kosar obviously had a really good career, and I would say Testaverde too. But, Steve Walsh, Erickson, Gino Torretta, there were some guys in there that really didn't do anything in the NFL, as far as that goes, or not much, I would say. And then, you even fast forward to the USC teams that had their little run there, other than maybe Carson Palmer. I mean, John David Booty, Mark Sanchez, Matt Leinart, a lot of those guys never did much. Matt Barkley, never did much in the NFL. And then, take the Alabama run up until Tua, A.J. McCarron and Greg McElroy and Jacob Coker were nothing special. So, there's a lot of quarterbacks in there that are fairly, pedestrian, wouldn't you say, Mark?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty much in line. I'll let stand what I said before. It's pretty easy to distinguish that there has been a greater need for that position to be filled by a future NFL quarterback than when Peyton Manning and Dan Marino and Ryan Leaf and all these other quarterbacks who were premier NFL prospects didn't win national championships. And other quarterbacks did.
Well, and you know what I would say, Mark, too, a lot of times it was about really, and Colin Cowherd made this point one time, he said, in college, it's about throwing to open receivers, because you usually are. In the NFL, it's about throwing receivers open.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you notice most of the plays in college, you see a lot of pass plays in college where the receiver's open by 5 yards. And so it's really a matter, if you take a pretty good college quarterback and you surround him with a bunch of NFL talent, then usually they're going to be pretty successful. And that's why I think some of those USC, some of those Miami quarterbacks, even obviously some of the Alabama quarterbacks didn't always translate to the NFL, because to a great degree, sometimes they were probably put in teams that they weren't surrounded with as much talent as they were, in college.
Mm-hmm.
You think that's maybe a fair assessment?
Well, I think that the way we approached the conversation is slightly different. You're basically making a distinction between guys that succeeded in the NFL versus even guys that just made the NFL. I was stating that through the 80s and 90s, there were teams that won national championships that didn't even have guys that were even looked at.
Oh, that's true.
By the NFL.
True.
So Mark Sanchez to me is an NFL quarterback. He played in 2 AFC championship games, but to your point, you're just looking at it a little bit differently. He was not successful, depending on your standard, was not a successful starting quarterback in the NFL. Whereas at least, Vinny Testaverde and Bernie Kosar. Well, Kosar was a successful quarterback, and so was Testaverde. But Gino Torretta and Matt Barkley and I'm getting off the national championship beat here, though. Those guys were NFL prospects and played in the NFL and had careers in the NFL. And Greg McElroy and A.J. McCarron had careers in the NFL.
Right. That's true. Yeah, I would just say it's, now it's become a different game. The other thing, too, that I think would help these quarterbacks nowadays is it seems to be that much more, I wouldn't say easier to transition to the NFL, but I think with the NFL taking a lot of these concepts from college, especially with the RPO game and the zone read game and things like that, whereas, college used to try to mimic the NFL with maybe trying to run some pro style, back a long time ago. Now it's, as we've mentioned before, it's college. There's the pros is kind of taken from college as far as, the scheme goes. And I think that's making it, a little bit more advantageous to transition to the NFL as a college quarterback, over to the NFL, wouldn't you say?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, David. Well, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it.
A pleasure, Mark. Take care.
All right. No E in Kelly, Dennis Wilson. Your beloved Jim Kelly. Great NFL quarterback, of course, Pro Football Hall of Famer. Yes, we recognize Bernie Kosar and Jim Kelly were successful NFL quarterbacks as Miami graduates. Yes. Would they be the last two? Toretta, not a good NFL quarterback, not successful. Craig Erickson, not a good NFL quarterback. Steve Walsh, not a good NFL quarterback. When is the last time Miami produced an NFL quarterback? Brad Kaya got drafted, didn't play. I'm talking about actually stayed in the league for at least a couple of years and got on the field. Since Gino Toretta. Ken Dorsey played, got some starts with the Cleveland Browns. I don't know if that counts. Yeah, the last. Now I'm being misrepresented right here because Bobby is taking my login and promoting Peyton Manning as the greatest quarterback in football history, which isn't necessarily far from the truth. So I'm not completely embarrassed by that comment. It can be debated, it can be defended, but not necessarily my opinion. It's in the top 5. I haven't made a list recently, but would have to place him in the top 5. All right. Appreciate everybody jumping on the line. Thank you so much for the phone calls. For Lon Phillips Sullivan of LSU Odyssey and David Waters of Gators Breakdown. I appreciate our guests showing up as well. We'll be back on here tomorrow at noon with Uncle Lou. So noon Eastern time with Uncle Lou. We should have a good time talking college football. And again, thank you so much for your support. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App is where you can catch up with me. And this channel will thrive, and this show in particular, based partially on your individual contributions. So again, thank you so much for talking college football with us, and we will see you tomorrow. Bobby, thank you so much for delivering a great show. And this is all possible because of Bobby's efforts as well. So see everyone tomorrow.